In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of what I learned when using Blender to do motion graphics for my new channel trailer. I created a timeline of my life through technology, which was more or less a celebration of, hey, I've hit 2 years with Tech-Multiverse, but also to kind of introduce people to my experience with technology all the way back from when I was a kid. So I saw this as a perfect opportunity to try and use Blender to make this animation because I had a vision in mind and it didn't turn out like I hoped, but it's not bad. I mean, like any animation, to be honest, you sacrifice quality for time. This whole animation took me a solid week of my spare time. And that included 2 days worth of rendering, which was something I didn't expect. So I figured I would walk through the whole process, share some of my experience with motion graphics, and give you a little bit of the business challenges, I guess is the best way to put this. I'm not going to go through how I actually animated it. I might just give you an overview of what approach I took technically, but I figured it would be nice to kind of walk through the design and the thinking that went behind this, but also the hacks that I implemented because I was under a time constraint and actually starting to stress out for this project, which I'm not supposed to do for these, but that's just kind of natural for me. I push myself to get a job done because I'm used to being under tight deadlines. So I have to remind myself this is just for you. This is just, don't expect anybody to watch it. But I still put pressure on myself because it's habitual at this point. So if you're interested, keep watching and we'll do a walkthrough of how this whole project went, and maybe I'll walk away with some insights that you might find useful. Just bear with me. This is going to be kind of a slow one, but we're going to get through some pretty important details, all of which are based on my professional experience as a motion graphics animator. I'll be sure to break this video up into chapters so that you can jump to the sections that are most important to you. So let's kick this off with things that I missed. I covered 2025, where during my day job I do agentic AI and my hobbies like extended reality, music, and IoT, but I forgot motion graphics. I mean, like, come on. Oh well. Let's just get into the design, where originally I wanted to do something like this, where if you're familiar with VS Code, you can see branching graphs that represent GitHub commits to a branch when you're writing code. But that would have resulted in like 35 branches, which was a good thing to avoid, which I realized later. So one of those major time-saving decisions I made was to just branch off of a year and have the points end rather than try and have custom merging. Now, in order to work efficiently, I needed to make sure I had my files organized in a clean fashion so that it was really easy to reproduce things and just copy and clone them, because that's literally all I did for a couple of days. Here's where you can see that process working. I basically had my folders where I stored my uh, assets, I guess, and it basically just set it up so once I had 1 year created with the proper lighting and everything, all I had to do is just change it out, just update the text. And I kept the text editable all the way through this process so that I can just click it, edit it to the next text. But there were some things I had to do when I actually masked all this. I had to convert that, which I'll go into later. But you can see how working through the file structure made this part a lot easier to just update the bits and pieces, just move it down the timeline and get the job done. Now, you may have noticed as I was cloning those that there were some block meshes tucked in there, and I used those as a Boolean mask, where basically I would slide the block away from the line to have it exposed. I learned later that this is probably not the most efficient approach and may be the result of why you're seeing some lag in this video. Blender was having a hard time, and this is Blender 4.4 before 4.5 came out. Didn't seem like Vulkan helped much even after I did get 4.5. After I had so many elements on the screen, by this point, my computer was lagging hard. In fact, if you're like me, you might have noticed the details where somewhere in here it starts going super fast, and it was because my computer was lagging so hard as I was mentally thinking through what I was seeing play out. It was actually a third of the speed slower than it should have been, which wasn't obvious to me until I rendered it. And of course, that's when I noticed this little red FPS notice telling me we're not running 24 frames per second. And that's when I was grateful to learn that Blender has a dope sheet. I mean, I'm used to working in Flash, and even though it's been a long time, the keyframes just were intuitive, and finally, when I saw the dope sheet, it made sense. But then it exposed all kinds of other problems. My trying to make things smooth actually made my keyframes out absolute mess, and so I had to spend the time to try and bring everything together into little sections. Literally an evening of this, bringing keyframes into tighter groups so that I could control how they worked. Actually, if you pay attention to the early stages of the animation, you might find the lines come in more smooth, and then at the end they're more blocky. Well, that's because I was like, screw it, nobody's going to notice. That's where it's critical as an animator to save the time to get the job done, especially if you're on a deadline. You can't worry about tiny little details that nobody's going to notice but you. And if you did notice this, I'd love it if you left a comment for me to tell me that you are at this level too, because this kind of stuff drives me nuts and I have to set it aside just so I can get the job done. At this point, it seems important to share how I even knew that my timing was off. Once I got my modeling process going and I had a good idea for how I was going to approach this technically, I needed to figure out how I was going to approach this from a bigger picture. I didn't even know how I was going to end it. I'm used to doing animations where I'm given a voiceover and I animate to the voiceover. Well, in this case, that might have been helpful to inform me that my screen was running slow, but I ended up not knowing that until I brought it into DaVinci Resolve. I did a quick render in Eevee without all the details just so that I could bring it in and check the timing. And that's when I realized my timing was off, because I started recording my voiceover over my existing animation and just started timing everything from there. This is not a standard approach. This is just how I did it. And again, I didn't really have a solid plan for what I was doing. I just knew the timelines, what I wanted. So when it came time to end it, I wanted to take a different approach, but my computer was lagging so bad, I went ahead and just started with the ending of the timeline animation and then created a whole new project for that. Then I blended that into the original animation using a still frame in DaVinci Resolve. So I got all my voiceover done, I got everything tightened up, and then I just overlaid everything and I knew, okay, now I know what the beginning's going to be and what the end's going to be. Now I have to render it. The one thing I despise about animating in 3D is having to render it. I get that Cycles is actually turns out really good, but Eevee is so much quicker. If you can do your motion graphics in Eevee, I highly recommend that, because rendering is one of those things. If I were on a time crunch waiting for 2 days and maybe have my computer crash and have to redo that, you need hardware to have that completely isolated and be able to do that efficiently. That's not practical for everybody. I wrote an article on this project and I'll put a link in the description, but in that I provide a video that gave me the settings that I used. It helped a lot, but it still took me 2 days to render the final animation. Before we wrap this up, there's one detail I'd like to share, which is about subconscious design. I intentionally left the lights going in the distance to draw and build some anticipation for my viewers. Give you a sense of, you want to know where it's going, because it doesn't just end at each step. I would have liked to have had some subtle movement in every little stop, but that would have been a lot more work and it just wasn't worth it, to be honest. So this just felt important to share. Kind of think about these subconscious details of how your viewers are watching your animation and how that might affect them. All right, well, that wraps up this video. I hope you liked it. Go check out my article if you're interested in seeing that. I'll put all the links to everything in the description, and give me a thumbs up. Let me know you like this. If helps me understand that people appreciate the work, and it actually helps my channel grow. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.